from an evolutionary perspective, as a feature or a bug? Our natural sort of tendency to form tribes.
So what's a bug?
Oh, sorry, this is a computer programming analogy, meaning like it would be more beneficial. Is it beneficial or detrimental to form tribes from an evolutionary perspective?
Yeah, but
what does it mean? What does a bug mean?
Yes, right. I mean,
well, yeah, because where's evolution going anyway?
It's beneficial from it's beneficial in the sense that it evolved by natural selection to benefit the individuals who did it.
Yes.
But if by bug you mean something that, from the point of view of the species, it would be great if you could just wipe this out,
right?
Because the species would somehow do better.
Yes,
as a result. Then yes, but then males are a bug.
Come on now, it's there's some nice things to males. Speaking as a male,
the fact that there are some nice things to males doesn't mean that they're not bugs. Maybe they're quite nice bugs, but it would be much better for the species as a whole not to have males who impose this violence on the species as a whole.
Yeah. As somebody who practiced controlled violence and doing a lot of martial arts, yeah, I'm not sure. It does seem kind of fun to have this kind of controlled violence, also sports. Also, I mean, the question of conflict in general, I guess that's the deeper question. Don't you think there's some value to conflict for the improvement of society, for progress? That this tension between tribes, isn't this like experiment, a continued experiment we conduct with each other and to figure out what is a better world to build? Like, you need that conflict of good ideas and bad ideas to go to war with each other. It's like the United States with the 50 states and it's the laboratories of ideas. Don't you think that is, again, feature versus bug? This kind of conflict, when it doesn't get out of hand, is actually ultimately progressive, productive for a better world.
Well, what do you mean by conflict? I mean, you can have conflict in the sense of people have different ideas about the solution to a problem. And so their ideas are in conflict. They can sit down on a log and chat about it and then decide, okay, you're right, or I'm wrong, or whatever. But if by conflict you mean a great idea to build a nuclear bomb and set that off, then no, I don't see why it's a good idea to have all this violence.
Yeah, there's... I wonder, I mean, it's not a good idea, but I wonder if human history would evolve the way it did without the violence.
Oh, I'm sure you're right. Probably humans would not have evolved in the sense that we have. But I would hope that the course of violence in evolution will continue in the way it has. So, there's all sorts of indications that the importance of violence has been reduced over time. And, this is made famous in Steven Pinker's book, but others have written about it too, that the frequency of death from violence in every country you look at has been declining. That's just great. And so, the amazing thing about this is that even when you take the deaths due to the First World War and the Second World War, the 20th century appears to have been statistically, meaning rates of death per individual, the least violent in history. So we haven't got very far down the course to nonviolence, but I don't see why we shouldn't just carry on doing it. I think it's ridiculous, frankly, excuse my frankness, to say that the violence is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think that it would be a wonderful concept if we could evolve somehow to a world, 3,000 years from now, where violence is really regarded as simply appalling, and that they look back on our time and can't believe what we were doing.
Yeah, but of course, violence takes a lot of different shapes as we get. as we start to think deeper and deeper about living beings on Earth, for example, the violence we commit and the torture we commit to animals, and then perhaps down the line, as we talked offline about, is with robots and that kind of thing. So there's just so many ways to commit violence to others. And some people now talk about violence in the space of ideas, which, of course, to me at least, is a bit of a silly notion relative to use that same V word for the space of ideas versus actual physical violence. But it may be that a long time from now, we see that even violence in the space of ideas is quite a manifestation of that same kind of violence. And so it is interesting where this is headed. And I think you're absolutely right. A nonviolent world does seem like a better world. I wonder if the constraints on resources somehow make that world more and more difficult, especially as we run out of resources.
Well, it's got to be very, very different from what we're doing nowadays. And it's unimaginably different. If we could imagine it, then maybe we could work towards it. At the moment, nobody knows how to work towards it.
Well, that's kind of the stories of humans. Is we don't really know the future. We're trying to ad hoc kind of develop it as we go, and sometimes get into trouble.
Yeah,
that's the violence.
But George Orwell's vision in 1984 was of 2 or 3 world powers, each so powerful that nobody could diminish could destroy the other. But the notion of an evolutionarily stable relationship among heavily armed world powers just does not seem as though it's reasonable at all. That is to say, we've now got 170 or 190 nations in the world, dominated by a few big ones, all with arms pointing at each other. And the notion that we could just carry on having peace talks and making sure that these arms don't get involved in some kind of massive conflagration seems incredibly optimistic. Some kind of major change has to happen, whereby, and some people would like to see all the weapons go. That'd be great. I'm a member of that sort of group that tries to see that happen. It's going to be very difficult to see it happen. Another kind of concept is the nations themselves will dissolve and will become one government. That itself is a terrifying vision, because the capacity for abuse by a single world power would be so problematic. And in addition, how do you get there without a war in the first place? Mm-hmm. So, at the moment, we have no reasonable kind of future in mind, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. It's just that we haven't yet to find it.
And a lot of people, like in the cryptocurrency space, argue that you can create decentralized societies if you take away the power from states to define the monetary system. So they argue, like, if you make the monetary system such that it's disjoint from the control of any one individual, any one government, then that might be a way to form sort of ad hoc decentralized societies. They just pop up all over the place. That's a really interesting technological solution to how to remove the overreach of power from governments.
Yes, right. Absolutely. And it may well be that the future will emerge out of some sort of quite surprising direction like that.